Hello, 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 y'all. I am fortunate enough to be here today with Mr. Scott, but I'm not going to steal his thunder. Scott, who are you and what are you doing today on the Speaking to Expand podcast?
Not even a last name, huh? Scott Friedman, full-time professional speaker for 38 years. Hard to imagine. Today, I just want to share relevant value to your listening audience on the speaking journey. Focus more on the global journey since I have really been speaking started in Asia in 1999 and spent about 125 days a year there now. So really strategies on how to become a global speaker and resonate within the audience.
So let's dive into that in particular, because I think that is something there could be some value in that kind of experience you have there. You started in Asia. How did you make that decision?
Well, most of my stories start with a young lady, so I'm not sure how far off track you want to get.
Keep it honest, keep it genuine, keep it transparent.
Yeah, I used to do many years ago, late 90s. I started my career in 1985, but in 1998, I was doing a program on a cruise ship called What's So Funny About Being Single? And met a lady from the Philippines, looked at the map and said, wow, how do I get to the Philippines? And called my buddy who was doing programs with the Singapore government and said, Abe, I think I've fallen in love. Oh, excuse me. He introduced me to his client at the Singapore government. And so I was doing programs with the Singapore government for about 19 years. Anyway, that started late 90s. And right, so that's about 25 years ago.
So you met this guy on a cruise who set you up with this woman, and through that woman you got the connection with someone in the Singaporean government. Is that right?
No, it's not right. I met the woman on the cruise ship. So I called my buddy Abe and said, who was doing programs with the Singapore government. And
Gotcha.
he introduced me to the client at the Singapore government, which was basically the training arm of the Singapore government. So at the time I was doing a program called How Do Leaders and Managers Engage Staff with Humor? Okay. And and then I did another one called Connecting with Customers. So we ran that for, 19 years. Just ended about 5-6 years ago now.
And so 19 years, I'm assuming that you didn't do the 19 years, the 19 years ended, and then you chose to expand out of Asia. At what point in your journey in speaking in Asia? And to clarify, it's Singapore, Philippines, where else? What other countries in Asia were you speaking at?
So really the two main speaking markets are Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, but actually Philippines now. But then I have to give you more to the story. So then in 2008, I founded what's called Together We Can Change the World, which is a nonprofit organization. We serve 5 countries. So we do 2 speaker tours a year where we bring speakers and authors from around the world, and we do these tours where we open up the markets to the speakers as well as do these leadership conferences.
Okay, cool. And you did about how many years in Asia before deciding to take the jump, I guess, internationally outside of Asia, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, as part of the speaker's journey, you're really, you speak in Canada, you speak in the Bahamas, you speak in Europe. So, I mean, I was speaking internationally along the way. Then in 1999, it became a conscious choice really to go over to Asia because I wanted to, pursue with this young lady who ended up being married. Then she ended up getting married in that 1 year time it took me to get there. But then I discovered Asia. So then that became a conscious choice, which really brings up to your listeners, it's more of an intentional journey. So I would recommend, if you're looking to, whatever we do in life, if you look at your 365 days a year and say, how do you want to be spending this time? How much consulting do you want to do? How much speaking? How much writing? Do you like facilitating? You like training? What do you like to do? So in a perfect world, you write that down, and then you figure out what your values are, where you want to spend your time, who you want to spend your time with, and then you're very, very intentional about creating that career. And I've fortunately been very good at that. And so my career pretty much when you're starting, you'll pretty much do anything to get rolling. But then when you're rolling a little bit, then you say, okay, let's be, what do I want my life to look like? And then how can I fit my career into that? I believe that our careers are tools to create the life we want to lead, a chance to hang out with the people we love, and a chance to make a difference in whatever unique way we choose. And so in that way, our careers are tools, and that we lead intentional journeys based on that.
And for you, I checked out your website before you hopped on here. You have a few books you've written. How did you go about making the decision to write those books when you thought it would make sense in your career? And how did you kind of go about that?
Okay, so there's writers who speak and speakers who write. I'm
Interesting.
I'm a speaker who writes. So I write for credibility. And that's very intentional as well. I mean, I think, the earlier you get a book out there, it becomes your calling card. I don't Writers who speak, they're really writers who ended up becoming becoming known for their writing. Then they're asked to speak and they're paid to speak, but they really started trying to make money writing and then ended up making money speaking. Speakers who write, the books really are just calling cards for the most part. I mean, you could some make some money on it, but I'm not looking to go on all the talk shows and all that to promote the books. I'm just using it to get into the conferences where I want to speak.
Hmm. When you get those speaking gigs at conferences where you want to speak, how do they kind of go about the decision-making process to accept you and have you on their stage as opposed to someone else?
So it all comes down to relevant value. What relevant value do I have to this particular audience where they would hire me over somebody else? And so that's where the book comes in. So if you are writing a new book every 3-4 years, and then that content applies to the audiences and is relevant to those audiences, and it's new content or exciting content, relevant content to that audience, then that may put you above the other speaker. And then obviously it's your video demo, your website, and calling other promoters, HR directors, event planners to find out how you did with their audience, and was it relevant, and why should they hire me?
And so when do you notice? So I was talking to another guest on the podcast, and he was saying a lot of speakers will write a book just because they've been kind of in the speaking game long enough that they realize, okay, it opens more doors. It feels almost like I need to write a book just as an obligation of, oh, I'm a speaker. I guess I have to write a book because enough people after I get off stage ask me, hey, where can I buy your book? And I say, oh, I don't have a book. He said so for that reason, a lot of speakers kind of have that push to write. Did you feel that, or have your other speaking colleagues felt that?
Yeah, well, and there's two thoughts in what you just said. One thought was, do I feel like I need it to be a speaker? And the answer is yes. And that's what I was saying with the calling card. It becomes a way to gain credibility. So yes, when you're competing in the marketplace, you should have a book. And then the other is, how do you create a trail of tangibles after you speak? So if they grab you, they get your book, then that's going to propel you, especially if they buy it online or on Amazon, then that's going to get you further engagements as well. So for both of those reasons, to get you in, and then to get you more engagements, and then to leave that trail of tangibles. In other words, how can I give them continuous learning after I leave? And one of those ways is through the book.
Cool. Question for the aspiring speakers out there, that they have an idea inside, or they have a story that they think could be impactful to a certain specific audience, but they just don't know who to talk to, where to find speaking engagements, where to find the decision makers, where to find the contact information of the decision makers, what is the right way to reach out to them, whether it's email, socials. What information what guidance would you give to that person that's having that kind of internal struggle?
Well, there's a book out there called The Artist's Way. And basically, one of the main concepts in the book is what's called morning pages. And so basically, it's waking up in the morning and journaling 2 or 3 pages. And so over time, and sometimes we're going to get up in the morning, I'm like, God, I don't feel like writing. I mean, I'm busy. I got things to do. But if you get in that habit, you'll find that what's inside of you is going to start to come out. It becomes a process. And then you look at what you're writing about, and then you you'll formulate ideas, and then you'll do some more writing, and out of that will be really become what the formation and the foundation of your talk and your book. So that's a good place to start to help you gather your thoughts.
Hmm. And you've been doing this for, like you said, about 38 years. How have you seen the industry change over the years? And then, assuming you still want to continue and continue speaking in the future, seeing these past trends and patterns, where do you see the patterns going in the future, and how do you plan to adapt to them?
So that's a lot in that one question. So when I started in the industry, there was no internet really. So I was a generalist, and I could play to different audiences. I could be a sales trainer, which I was. I was an after dinner speaker. So that was one market. The kickoff, the closing. So I had 5 or 6 different markets, and I would market my way and market it differently to different clients. Today with the internet, and if we're going to find a speaker, even if we book through a speakers bureau, first we're going to do our due diligence online and see who we're looking for. And so to have all of that, all of those diverse ideas and brands under our umbrella out there is not so wise, I don't think, today. Even though we may have so much to say in so many different topics, I would truly recommend in today's market to become a specialist, not a generalist, and go deep into one area, be known for something, so that when I'm searching online for, leadership in transition of mergers and acquisitions, whatever it may be, that wow, boom, there's going to be a lot of articles. I'm going to have a social media footprint pretty deep in the area that I want to speak on. So it's really determining what that may be. And then you can do other things as well. And once you get into a client, they're going to ask you for other things, which is great. But I think for that online presence, it's important to create that brand in one area. Then the second part of your question, as far as, how do you stay relevant in the marketplace? I learned a good lesson when I was president of the National Speakers Association. So I used to spend, before that, I was president in 2004, 2005. So it's been about 2 decades now. But before I became president, I would spend, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 hours on a talk, interviewing 3 or 4 people in the audience that are going to be there, that are known to be respected and doing cutting edge things in the industry. So that way I could myself become an expert pretty quick in those 10 or 12 hours by doing a fair amount of interviewing and then doing my research as well, the latest industry tabloids or now print online, whatever it may be, to become an expert, so that my information, my content is relevant because I'm really speaking their language. When I was president, I got that down from about 12 hours or 4 to about 2 hours, because I just didn't have the time. I really wanted to play president that year. So I found I could really do almost the same thing I was doing in 12 or 14 hours in 2 hours. And now maybe 4 hours or 6 hours, whatever it is. But that's really the key is to stay relevant, is just know the right questions to ask. I mean, just find out, you just ask who the most respected are, those that are doing innovative things in the industry, if it's sales, who your top salespeople are, and then you interview them, and then you make them the heroes of your talk. So how has the industry changed? The content has gotten better, the relevant content, the motivational generalist of old is, you don't see that so much anymore. There's a few that are really good at it that are still making a good living, but for the most part, you don't see too much of it, and it's not as revered as it was way back when, because we are now in the mature cycle of the speaking industry. And then we need a created experience. I was speaking to one of the keynote speakers for the tourism promotion board of the Philippines. They bring in or they go out and promote the Philippines all over the world. And so this was for a big conference, a lot of money spent on this conference. And one of the guys that was speaking was an influencer. And, he he met with our group, our Together We Can Change the World group that was speaking at the time in the Philippines, and was telling us, and he was actually giving me my feedback on my slides, is where it kind of started. And he goes, your slides are so outdated. It's kind of the old school kind of slides. And he says, if you don't have movement in your slides, if they're not talking to you. And so the generation of today, Generation Y, Generation Z, they can digest a lot of things from a speaker. They can see a Twitter feed going on one, and the slides can be doing all kinds of different things. For me personally, being around for a while, it's a little tougher for me to see. But one thing I did do recently was work with somebody in creating new slides using AI program called Mid-Journey, which is pretty amazing how you can come up with these slides that tell a story just by themselves. So that's kind of my way of what he was saying, is to create, your slides should be in themselves be an experience. So that whole engagement, that whole experience that we see in every aspect of our lives now is surely true in the speaking industry, and will continue to be even more so in the future.
What's really interesting about what you just said of where you see the industry going, you mentioned one thing that you already did, which was using Midjourney to create slide decks. I haven't heard of that, but conceptually it makes a lot of sense. Do you see that becoming the norm? People it's called keynote speaker for a reason, right? Do you see that kind of changing?
I mean, it's funny how this whole thing happened. Justin Cohen, a good friend of mine from South Africa, who's been on a couple of our Together We Can Change Your World tours, we had a client in Malaysia that used Justin, and then it turned into him writing a book called What the Future. Basically, it's how to humanize AI. It's a great book for businesses today. And so he did a program. We had an audience. I was also a speaker on this program in Malaysia. There was a huge program, the largest human capital program in Asia, sponsored by HRDC Corp in Kuala Lumpur. 4,000 people, 3,500, 4,000 people. And his talk was entitled Lead the Future with AI and Justin Cohen. So basically he was showing you how he created his program with AI, not only some of the content, but all the slides. And the slides and the screen was so rich already, because it was one of those beautiful venues that had paid for a lot of money for a really nice screen with all the luminance per, however they figured that. But it was anyway. So it was so rich, and so it just kind of blew you away, and like, wow. I mean, there's a story in every single one of these slides, and so I'm like, wow, that's low hanging fruit for any professional speaker today. Is get your act together and get your slides fixed. So that's what I did. And that's just one way to stay relevant, is because now there's more engagement. I don't have to say anything necessarily, because my slides are going to tell a story. But Mid-Journey that's what he used. That's one great platform. And I'm sure there's many more AI creating slides today, where you just basically, the prompt engineering has become such a buzzword in AI. You have to know the right questions to ask. And it's the same thing when you're creating slides. You tell them what you want, and then I want more of this or want more of that. Put a toaster in his left hand and a ice pick in his right hand. And I mean, it's absolutely crazy, where before you could spend hours and hours trying to find the right slide in some kind of slide library that has 3 million slides. But this way you just create it on your own through prompt engineering.
I know that I found out about this prompt engineering software. No affiliation with it, but I just use it. It's called Prompt Perfect, or Perfect Prompt, and you say like what you would normally say in ChatGPT, and then it basically it adds all the juicy details to it, make it more insightful, and it customizes it for you. Really useful stuff. So I think it's interesting how you mentioned prompt engineering. Going back to what you mentioned, you in your experience as the president of the National Speakers Association, what speakers were able, let me phrase this and be careful how I phrase this. What did the speakers do differently that were able to make the most out of NSA that you noticed as the president, seeing all the speakers part of NSA?
Well, I mean, any professional industry association, you should be able to use that association in two ways. I mean, one, it's for networking, That's your tribe. That's where you learn from, you get business from, it becomes your community. So that's the networking piece of it. And the other is education, to really find out what you need to know, where you're going. How do you stay relevant? How do you become if it's keynoting that you want to do, how do you become a great keynoter? How do you become a great facilitator, trainer, whatever it may be that association offers? But like anything, those that get the most out of life are the ones that dive in and get involved. So I got involved at a chapter level early on. I became president of the NSA Colorado in 1988. I'd just been in the business for 3 years. And I learned quickly that I was going to, first I loved serving, but the serving always led to so much more than I gave. And Cabot Robert, who was my first mentor and really got me in the speaking business in 1985, when he saw me, I was president of a sales group when I was 25 years old, and he came to speak to our sales group. He told me I had a unique style. I should be a professional speaker. And at the time, I didn't realize he said that to everybody. But it was too late. I'd already quit my job and hung out my professional speaking shingle. And what I learned from Cabot, which is such a great lesson in anything we do today, is that collaboration is the greatest competition, or competition is the new collaboration. We can gain so much more if we come from a place of abundance, that there's plenty of pie, as he would say, for everybody. That if we help everybody raise their game, that in doing that, we're going to raise the brand of professional speaking, and there will be plenty of business for everyone. And especially with the way things are today with the internet and so many different models to make money in the speaking industry, that has never been more true.
You mentioned this mentor in particular. I think mentorship is such a critical part that's not super talked about, but I'll ask you the question, who has been the most impactful mentor that you've had over the past 38 years in your professional speaking career?
It starts with Cabot, for sure. I mean, that he got me in the industry. I live by that motto. We have an award in the National Speakers Association called the Cabot Award. We give one a year for the person that most exemplifies Cabot, his integrity, his honesty, his give back, his feeling of abundance. And I'm very proud to say that I won that award. So, and I don't say that with any kind of ego involved, other than what he taught me is such a powerful lesson. And it's, it's the secret sauce. I mean, you just give it all away. You help as many people as you can. You're just a kind ambassador in speaking and in the world, and that comes back to you a millionfold. So that's the way I've tried to live my life, and in honor of Cabot and just his legacy he leaves. But was there a question?
No, that was my question. I think you answered it fantastically. Yeah.
Oh, that was my mentor. That's right. Sorry.
And then for you on stage and as a speaker, public speaking is one of the most feared things for all across humanity. I think it's like public speaking ranks higher than death across all of humanity. I say that because there's a lot of personal development that comes with public speaking and professional speaking. In your experience, what did that journey of personal development look like in par with your speaking career?
Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Do the things you fear the most, and the death of fear is certain." So it's, it's like everything else in life. You start doing it and it becomes your comfort level. So most people join Toastmasters when they think they want to become a professional speaker. They want that other segment of your audience, they want to present their product better. They're an entrepreneur and they really need to sell themselves and their companies if they're going to get venture capital money, whatever it may be. So Toastmasters is such a great place to do that, because it teaches you how to organize your thoughts in such a way that you can communicate them effectively, where you can persuade other people. So that's a great place to start as Toastmasters. In my case, I was a professional speaker before I joined Toastmasters, but I learned quickly that was a wonderful place to hone and practice my skill, and then I could do it on my terms. Pretty much. I mean, I had to follow what do they call that in Toastmasters? But anyway, but yeah, so that way, I could, in a 5 or 7 minute talk, it really taught you how to organize your thoughts and how to become a better storyteller to get your thoughts and your points across, which storytelling really is the key to any good speech.
How did you realize that storytelling is the key to any good speech?
Well, just in listening to other speakers that, you look at your favorite speakers today, and I challenge your audience as you listen to speakers, see if what I'm saying is correct, and you'll say, he's right. The best speakers are the best storytellers, and to become a great storyteller, you need to tell you need to tell the story in such a way, and in such a compelling way, that the audience learns the lessons. They go on that journey with you. They can see themselves in that story. The old in your story, in your story, they should see their life, basically. And less is more in storytelling. We used to have a mastermind group that we would play half the words exercise. So you would say, okay, give us your best, your what you consider your signature story, your best story. Okay, now your job for the next 1 hour, or sometimes longer, is to tell that same story in half the words. And all of a sudden you're going to realize that a lot of that story doesn't need to be there, because we tell stories like from the moment it happened to the moment it ended, but there's a lot of stuff in there that we don't need to hear. It doesn't develop the theme. It's not a comedic aside, which if it's not, then it shouldn't be in there necessarily. So Jerry Seinfeld used to say he would spend hours taking a punchline from 6 words to 3 words or 4 words. Less is more in humor, and it's a great exercise, is half the words exercise.
Interesting. You mentioned Jerry Seinfeld and you mentioned humor. On your website that I checked out before we connected here, I saw motivational, not speaker, motivational humorist. How have you gone about integrating humor into your speeches and your talks? And then what tips or what guidance would you give professional speakers to integrate humor into their storytelling on stage?
So the purpose of a humorist really is to make you laugh. That's their number one purpose. So motivational humorist, the difference is you want to deliver a message on the wings of humor. So really, humor becomes your delivery tool. So as a motivational humorist, you have a way out. So if they laugh, it's humor. If they don't, it's motivation. So that way, you're never in too much trouble. Yeah, the market really defined me as a motivational humorist early on. I was hired a lot for after dinner talks, and I realized that Cabot Robert had said that the first time I've heard it many other times from people, but you don't have to use humor unless you want to get paid, because when people laugh, they remember the laughter, and then they attach that to the message. So it's a wonderful way to engage people, especially in an era where there is so much distraction and so many different ways to be pulled away from what we're trying to listen to or try to learn. So the humor is that buffer that brings you in, makes you laugh, but then you learn the message. And I'll be happy to provide. I wrote a book called Happily Ever Laughter: How to Engage Any Audience, and I'm happy to provide that electronically free for any of your listeners. I'll give you the link later.
Awesome.
You can pass on. But yeah, it's there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I think to build in the possibilities in your pre-programmed questionnaire, I ask questions that lead me to that lead me to opportunities to add humor. I do a magic trick where I rip up a newspaper, and when I'm ripping up this newspaper, I talk about all the things that cause you stress. And so there's great place for humor there, and shows that you know about your audience by learning a little about what does cause, what are the challenges, what does cause this group of people stress. Get a little dirt that you can add in there. And then I if I'm a closing speaker, I try to attend as much of the meeting as I can and listen for those laughter points. And every time there's a laughter point, I know that I can write callback humor based on that, just what's happening at the moment. I do another bit in my talk where I use Siri a fair amount in my talk, where I have a little conversation where and it's a lot funnier if you write song parodies, or Siri makes it funny because of the way she says it. And then and the same thing, I sit through the meetings and pull out some gems that I kind of turn into humors of what may cause them stress. And then I ask that question ahead of time, and then I have another piece of the program that says, "Hey Siri, with this prompt group of accountants, what could possibly..."
Okay, I found this. Check it out.
Sorry.
He's always listening.
See? Who knew? So then she'll rattle off a list of the stressors, and it's a lot. It's funny based on what's happened in the meeting and what little dirt I can find out that everybody in the audience can relate to, something that may have happened at the meeting last year that really stuck out, or but just come up with a list of 15 or 20 things that she'll just rattle off, and sometimes it causes great laughter, other times just a nice chuckle. So
one tip that I got from another podcast guest was to truly connect with your audience. Instead of talking to the audience, you pick a few people in the audience that you have this one-on-one conversation with, and everyone in the audience feels like you're having that one-on-one convo with them. And he said, Ryan, before the talk, you got to go up and you shake hands, meet a few of these people, start a conversation with them, just get to know them. So when you're on stage and you're speaking, you're talking directly to Jenny, Matt, Gazelle, whatever the person's name is, and talking to them. And that actually ended up working out really well. So is there any easy tip like that you could share from your experience from 38 years of you speaking, or something that you've seen other speakers do that has worked very well for them?
yeah, I think that's a great tip right there. I mean, so many speakers, and speakers for the most part have a little bit of ego involved. So they may have that one audience member that's the hands are crossed like this, and then the speaker's mind, they're going, I'm going to get that. He's going to, and that's not the way to approach it, because they may, well, for whatever reason, they may be the way they are. But you find the couple that are shaking their heads, and you pick them from different parts of the room. So just like whoever your guest was. So if I'm speaking far left corner, I find a face in there that's shaking their heads that is really with me. We're having a one-on-one conversation. Everybody in that vicinity thinks I'm talking to them. And same thing all over the room. So you want to make sure that you do talk to everybody in the room. And that's a wonderful technique to do it, is to find six faces all over the room. But to remember, from a speaker's perspective, we're not there to control the audience. We're there to ask what we have in common. To be a successful speaker, to be a successful leader, there's three commonalities: humility, authenticity, and vulnerability. If you have those three characteristics in a speech, you will become a great speaker. Too often you see speakers that lack humility, that they become the hero of their own stories. And the first time it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. They achieved a lot. And then the second one, well, that's not so bad. Then by the third time, you're like, I'm kind of tired about hearing how great this person is. It's so much better if you make other people the heroes of your story. You find out. I was just talking to Justin actually a couple of days ago, and he was telling me he was just giving a speech in Malaysia, and that we had kind of set up together, and that was the founder of Nissan, and it was Nissan Malaysia. And he did some research, and he found out, gosh, now I can't remember the exact story, but of how he got started and what his dream was as a kid. And he told his story, and it just bonded the audience. So again, storytelling, and then again, is it relevant to the audience, that story? So the more you can find out about your audience, and just digging a little, you can find so much with ChatGPT and AI today, or just to ask the questions. But in this case, he said, and then you create that commonality, because now not only are you one of the team, you're kind of leading that, you're that community, because you know about the founder. And so that's real important. So too often humility gets in the way of a great speaker, his ego, you see that they have ego. So to be vulnerable, to share your lessons, your failures, all of a sudden you take yourself off that pedestal of being a speaker, and you just become one of the audience, somebody that everybody can relate to. And the authenticity is, don't try to steal material ever. Just figure out what your voice is and just share who you are with your audience. So those three things are really key in giving a great speech.
Real it connects with the audience far better. I completely agree. You mentioned one thing earlier that I want to touch back on, before we wrap up here. You mentioned speakers bureaus and using those. There are a ton of speakers bureaus, and before I, wasn't really aware of that, but after I had gotten into it, I realized there's a lot of different ones. How did you use speakers bureaus, and what tips would you give as far as how to use them, when not to use them, when to use them for professional speakers and or aspiring speakers that are looking for that one jump to catapult them into professional speaker?
Yeah, there's that myth out there that says, oh, I don't. When I want a speakers bureau, they don't want me. I'm not ready yet. But as soon as I'm ready, or then I don't need them anymore, then they need me. But that's the question I always ask: would you rather have 100%, 75% of a nice fee, or 100% of nothing? So your speakers bureau can be a wonderful distribution system, a wonderful way to get you business. And it seems, because there's a fair amount of bureaus out there today, that because it's pretty easy to become a speakers bureau, especially if you're not a member of the IASB. IASB is the International Association of Speaker Bureaus. I'd recommend that we do most of our business through IASB if we can. I mean, obviously, if somebody calls you and says, I got $15,000 or whatever the number is, and I'm not a member, what the heck, it's hard to say no. But they have a code of ethics, and for sure they're a legitimate bureau. I find to be listed by a lot of, I'm probably listed by 100 different speaker bureaus, and then I really focus on maybe 10, because what happens is, if somebody's looking for a speaker and they're looking through the different catalogs online of speaker bureaus, and they see my face in 5 or 10 of them, and they start, maybe they have different videos, which they do. In fact, I just sat with one a little while ago, and we kind of updated some of my clips. Then they get that name. All of a sudden, it becomes in their subconscious your name. So I think that's a reason to be listed with more than 5 or 10. But most speakers, and in 1999, I had the great fortune with Joe Cavender, the president of the International Association of Speakers Bureaus, to found the IASB NSA Council. So every year I host a meeting in Colorado. We usually ski half day, and then we talk in the mornings and the late afternoons. But so for the last 25 years, basically, we've had these meetings. So I've with the president of NSA, president of IASB, president-elects, speakers that are doing a lot of business with bureaus that bureaus respect. So I've heard a lot of what speakers are doing, but what I think I differ a little bit from other those that are really at the top of their game. I'm not in that category really, but I mean, like the $30,000 speakers that are doing 100 speeches a year or whatever that attend some of these meetings. Sorry, this is a long-winded answer. I'm crazy.
It's good. It's good.
Anyway, so and what they do is they pick 10 partners, 10 speaker bureau partners, the ones that are the very top of our speaking industry, and then so that they get to know 10 bureau owners, their agents, so that they really have a feeling of what they're a good fit for, and that's why they choose 10. I choose 100, and within those 100, I like to be listed so that I'm out there, but then I really have partners in the industry that know what I do, that we have a relationship, that we go at it together. With spin-off business, we figure out the best way to approach it. One of the things that has come up for 20 years in these meetings, because bureaus are so transactional, is how do you move from being a transactional bureau to long-term revenue? Because there's so many ways today to have a relationship that goes on for to make lots of money with a speakers bureau, with online consulting and your webinars and whatever. And so that's why, as we see that model shift a little bit more now, where the bureaus aren't so transactional, that they really are looking for these different opportunities to tap into some of this revenue, especially when you have AI. And what I used to have to go translate my books, I sell my rights in Asia, and then they would translate the books into Malay, whatever. Now, Chat GPT can translate your books in a minute. So, I mean, the opportunity to have your work everywhere in the world is so much greater, and to have a partner with a bureau who specializes in certain countries or whatever. So what your question, and sorry, it's taken me 2 weeks to get there. How do you know which ones to choose? So it's, if you want to speak in a certain area of the world, I mean, what bureaus are really working in that area of the world, a topic area? If you're in healthcare, there's some really good healthcare bureaus. So it's figuring out, and it's a dance. You learn. It's relational, like anything in life, really. I mean, you figure out where the connection is, and what makes sense.
It sounds like there are niche specific speakers bureaus. Is that right? Like you said, healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. But and again, I mean, but there's a lot of generalist bureaus, but they have clients in a certain area, and then like financial services, and then they end up working with other financial services companies.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Cool. Well, is there any last message that you would want to leave for aspiring speakers, professional speakers, or business owners who speak to grow their business?
Yeah, I'm going to look at. I made a list of things. I just want to see if there was anything I didn't cover. Sure. I did pretty well. Not bad. Yeah. Again, I would just go back to the point of, really, it starts with the speaking industry is a great industry. In the National Speakers Association, over the many years we've been, what are we? Did we just go 50 years now? Is it 50 or 40? 50, I think 50 now. In all those years, there's never been trying to define what a professional speaker has changed so much. It used to be, the number one revenue source was through keynote speaking. Now keynote speaking is closer to 6 or 7 on the list. There's so many opportunities. So collaboration is key, but it all starts with know what your values are and know where you want to spend your time, and then be intentional about how you spend your time and creating those perfect 365 days.
Boom. There we go. Well, Scott, thank you for taking the time to join us here. And guys, I hope you found this super, super valuable, and we will go from here. Cheers, y'all.